We've built every snow tower, the lodge, every underground system. We've done that ourselves, and we leave that to the community as our legacy.
Welcome to the storm. I'm your host, Stuart Winchester. Pennsylvania skiing is a modern miracle. It is a testament to the magic of snowmaking and to the industry's potential to weather an unpredictable weather world. And we're going to talk about the folks who built one of the most resilient of these little ski areas today, as we focus on Ski Big Bear, Pennsylvania, not California. I'll get that one to you someday. I'm so fired up that you're here. Some big changes at the Storm recently, including the addition of a video version of this podcast, which you can watch at stormskiing.com, on the Substack app, or on YouTube at Storm Ski Journal. You can follow the Storm at that same handle, at Storm Ski Journal on X and Instagram. And you can rep the Storm by picking up some merch at the Storm store at stormskiing.myshopify.com. But the very best way to support the Storm's mission of independent ski journalism is to upgrade to the paid tier of the Storm Skiing Journal and Podcast newsletter, which will get you access to 100% of the Storm's written content, past and present. All right, quick note from my partner, Aspenware. Can you imagine a future where 99% of your mountain products are booked online? Well, Aspenware can help you do that. Aspenware is the leading e-commerce solution purpose-built for the ski industry. They create customized e-commerce platforms that ensure resort guests spend more time doing what they love and less time standing in lines. Utilizing the team's extensive industry experience, Aspenware strives to make the resort booking process seamless with a mobile-friendly, simplified sales process that anticipates the needs of customers at every part of their journey. Based in Denver, Colorado, Aspenware stands apart as an innovator. They understand the value that software and technology bring to a mountain resort, and they strive to create solutions so good they seem invisible. Visit aspenware.com to learn more. All right, time for episode 209 of the Storm Skiing Podcast. Ron Schmalzle, President, co-owner, and General Manager of Recreation Management Corporation, and Lori Phillips, General Manager of Ski Big Bear, Pennsylvania. My guests today operate Ski Big Bear at Mast Hope Mountain, Pennsylvania. Ski Big Bear offers 650 vertical feet, served by 4 chairlifts and 3 carpets. Lori Phillips has been the ski area's general manager since 2019 and has worked at Ski Big Bear since 2001. Ron Schmalzle is president, co-owner, and general manager of Recreation Management Corp., which operates the ski area for the Mast Hope Mountain community. Lori, Ron, welcome to the Storm. Pennsylvania skiing is one of the unsung miracles of U.S. skiing, and I am always fired up to dig in and see how you make it happen. How are you both doing today?
Good morning. All is well here.
Great, Stuart, and thanks for having us on to tell our story.
You know, I hate to pump up Pennsylvania and then change the subject immediately, but last time I saw you both in January up at the Hill, you were telling me that you spend part of the spring each year out in Utah. So I actually want to start there. How was Utah? Where did you go? How were the conditions?
Well, I think I am the one who's in Utah the most, and I call it market research. And every time that I can sneak away, I get out there. We have a home there. 3 of my 4 children live there. My aunts and uncles, cousins, sisters, everybody lived there. And now I have 5 of 6 grandchildren living there. And we have a second home that we spend time out there with. So Utah is my second home. I love it there. My favorites are the independently owned ski areas known as Alta and Snow Basin. And my goal is to spend more and more time out there to be with my family and enjoy this great sport.
And how was the spring out there?
The spring was fantastic. We arrived to a real snowy season. They went over 500 inches again this year. some of the best skiing in the country. And then we had sunny weather for a little while, and then stormy weather after that. So a little bit of everything, but always good and always wonderful to be out in Utah enjoying what I think is the best skiing in the country.
I can't disagree with you, and I don't know many people who would. Lori, did you manage to sneak out there after Big Bear closed?
I did. I got out there for about 2 weeks and likewise spent a couple of weeks hopping around, seeing a lot of different places. I learned to ski at Beaver Mountain, so I always like to go back to Beaver and had a good visit with Christy and Travis while I was there, and they do a great job. And also saw some friends at Sundance and Brighton and just had a great couple of weeks out there. So it's always good to rejuvenate and remind myself why I enjoy this industry so much.
Yeah, that's awesome, Lori. I think Utah skiing, the main resorts there around the Wasatch get the most attention, the ones on Icon and the Park City resorts. But there's a lot of good little ski areas in Utah as well. And you just mentioned two in Beaver Mountain and Sundance, and they still get a lot more snow than almost anywhere else. I mean, Beaver, I think, gets 400 inches a year. What's the experience like of being at these little places out in Utah?
Well, they remind me more of us. And so when Ron talks about market research, I'd like to see what the little guys are doing. And I actually had a powder day at Beaver Mountain. And so it was great to take some of our team out there and allow them to enjoy some good quality Utah snow, but yet at the same time, see an operation that's similar to ours and get some ideas of what we do well, what we could be doing better, and it just kind of keeps those creative juices flowing.
Yeah, let's talk about that for a minute because I'm going to take your market research comment seriously because you are running the kind of ski area that Utah skiing needs to actually be sustainable, right? It's not like there's that many people in Utah. These would just be little regional places if there wasn't a tourist industry attached to them. And a lot of that tourist industry comes from these populated areas, these cold weather cities with smaller ski areas. So as you ski around Utah and see these aspirational places, what do you take back to Ski Big Bear that you want to sculpt Ski Big Bear into to make it an important piece of the same ecosystem that also includes these big ski areas out in Utah?
Well, I think there's a couple of resorts in Utah that you see a level of service that is an example for areas across the nation. And that's a good place to start. You know, the quality of food and beverage that you might experience at a larger resort makes us want to aspire to be better. Um, you're looking at creating a product that is good for families. And what I see when I go out there, I'm looking at how do their lessons operate? How are we preparing our guests to even experience bigger mountain skiing if they choose to participate in it? And there's so many ways that we're the same, but every ski area has its own personality. And you pick and choose what you think is realistic for you. One of the things that I see is, you know, there's so much in sustainability efforts that some of these bigger areas that are able to accomplish. And that's something that's harder for us in our area to be able to do. And so I'm looking for little things that they do that maybe we can incorporate that are realistic for us. And so there's so much to be learned if you get out and open your eyes and just you don't have to invent everything yourself. You can steal ideas too, and it's always fun to go see what people are doing well and see if there's a way you can make a piece of that work for you.
Yeah. How do you approach the idea of creating a skier, right? Because that's your role, really. And when I go to Snowbird, skiers are amazing.
Mm-hmm.
I don't want to anger the crew over there and Dave Fields, but I don't think it's probably the best place to learn to ski. It's very steep. It's very challenging. I'm sure they have a learning area and they have a little chairlift behind the tram. Nonetheless, if you were to give me my choice, I would rather ski at Big Bear. And I think if every skier looked like Snowbird, we wouldn't have that many skiers. So how do you approach this idea of really being a beginner focused area, or maybe you don't. This is just my assumption that this is your place in the ski ecosystem. So taking what you see in Utah, I mean, how do you use Big Bear as a staging ground for that?
That's a really good question. I started in this industry through the education part as an instructor and then a ski school leader. And I think it's really important. And I would argue that many of those really good skiers that you see in Snowbird and Alta and Snow Basin and across the country started in little areas just like us. When I look around at all the ski resorts across Utah and across the country, I think we have a tentacle in every single one of them, that one of our people who started young at this little place called Ski Big Bear graduate to these resorts and take on a lifestyle that sticks with them for the rest of their lives, and they move on to these bigger places. And honestly, I think it's somewhat easy to ski in the most challenging places in Utah, as opposed to some of the conditions we see in the East, where you have to be right on the middle of your boots at all times. And I think the best skiers generally come from areas with very challenging conditions. And one thing that we're so proud of, and that's why we have, and we'll talk about this, I'm sure, later, it's why we are focused on introducing people to the sport at all ages and installing surface lifts and making that experience good. If we're known and good at one thing, it's bringing people into the sport and giving them not only a safe introduction to a sport, but also one where they can have success quickly and they can get the basics at an area like this, so they can graduate on to bigger places and understand our spot in that ecosystem. And that is introducing families and people of all ages to this wonderful sport.
How much does that fire you up when you're on a lift at Alta or Snow Basin and you meet someone from PA, maybe even someone who started at Ski Big Bear? I mean, does that happen a lot? And what's that like for you?
It happens all the time. And in fact, when we go out there, we have contacts at every place. Some of it through Lori's leadership on the National Ski Areas Association and the Pennsylvania Ski Areas Association, but a lot of it through people that have graduated from, as a young person working for us, just really getting a bite into this industry and staying with it and becoming employed at places out there.
Let's talk about Big Bear now. How was the season? It seemed like it was pretty strong throughout the Northeast, throughout the country, actually, compared to the previous season. So, what can you tell us about the 2024 to 2025 winter at Ski Big Bear? How'd it go?
It was a good season. And, when you have these little areas back east, we're so dependent on the 3 holiday periods. And the most important is to get off to a good start is Christmas week. And we had a very good start. We had most of our terrain open prior to Christmas week. We opened a little earlier than we had planned. So we had a strong Christmas week, a very good Martin Luther King weekend, and then a pretty strong President's Week. And when you have all three, that is a successful season with skier days. And obviously, we all had a bump across the industry through COVID, and now that has leveled out. But we're nowhere near back to the level we were for pre-COVID. Our business doubled during COVID because it just was a thing that people could do. We're located less than 2 hours from New York City, so they could get in their car and come skiing. And it's one of the few things that they could continue to do on a regular type basis. So that helped our business. And we still maintain some of that momentum because it introduced new people to the sport. And finding a place like Ski Big Bear and all the Pennsylvania and Mid-Atlantic resorts have experienced a real heyday during that period and just after. But this season was a good one.
Those 3 holidays are important throughout the industry, but there's a certain set of ski areas, and I kind of call it the Midwest operating schedule, where they're open for Christmas, they open until President's Week, and then they stay open a little bit later and then usually shut down. How much does the skier interest among your demographic, among your loyal skiers, actually fall off after President's Day? Because it seems like kind of a cliff. Now, I was up at J Peak last week. It was packed. I had to park in the back of the lot, and I got there a little after 10. So obviously a very different ski area, very different dynamic. Obviously, there's still places out in Utah going, but what's the Ski Big Bear skier calendar look like, and how much does that interest kind of fall off a cliff right after the President's holiday?
I think it's changing. I think it's changing because of snowmaking and our commitment to infrastructure and everyone's commitment to infrastructure. The problem in the past was booking a room, booking an Airbnb, or booking a place at a resort to come up skiing, and us not knowing how long we were going to stay open. We now make a commitment to stay open those first couple weeks in March, and we can deliver that commitment by making sure that we have the proper base to get through anything at the end. So I think it's changing. I think people in our region now expect us to be open into the second week in March, where in the past, we just wanted to get out of that as soon as we could after President's Week, because financially, there was no way to make money after President's Week. So from a business perspective, the faster we could get closed, the better it was for our year. That is changing, and we're adding an extra 2 and 3 weeks onto the season. So it's a very positive thing.
How far could you push that? Camelback sometimes will stay open into April. Seven Springs, I know it's the other side of the state, but we'll do the same. So it's not unprecedented in Pennsylvania. Do you ski until the snow runs out, or are you just skiing until business falls off? What's your philosophy as you look ahead here?
I think we want to continue to push the envelope there. And I think for us, a natural end of the year is wherever St. Patrick's Day weekend falls. That's another holiday that people like to celebrate with. And although Easter we've been open Easter a couple of times, but that moves all around. And this year, Easter was so late that we probably can't make it. But I think a realistic goal for us in the Mid-Atlantic region is wherever St. Patrick's Day falls. So that second, third week of March. And I think we just have to have the business sense to build that in and build confidence with people booking vacations that we'll be there. And skiing in the spring is some of the very best. It's a strange industry. You can open up with one trail in early December and be filled. You can open up 100% in the third week of March and nobody comes. So we need to change that marketing strategy to give them the confidence that we'll have good skiing then.
So that spring becomes a little more important if you can't get things going on the front end. And speaking very generally, there have been some really rough Decembers over the past 10 to 15 years where ski areas in the Mid-Atlantic, which is the region I usually slot Pennsylvania into. Maybe you think of it a little bit differently. Sometimes I say Northeast, but it's a very tough region. Have you ever missed Christmas week? And what does that do? What are the implications of that for your business?
I've been at this for 40 years. And in the course of 40 years, we've missed Christmas week twice. And it's devastating. You do never get a chance to build momentum. The following year is difficult to sell passes. But we've changed our attitude there as well. It used to be our business plan that we would not even consider trying to make snow until Thanksgiving weekend. We just wouldn't do it because it made no sense. Now we turn it on as soon as we see a window of 2 days or even a day and a half. And if it were November 1st, we would begin the process and take the risk of making snow. And with that philosophy, most of the time you're going to have success opening up for Christmas week. And I would ask this question at staff orientation every year: when is the most common open date for Ski Big Bear? The answer is a simple one. It's December 26th, because that's the last possible time that we can open to make sure that we have a successful year. But we're constantly beating that date now by a week or 2 weeks because of the new philosophy of being prepared to turn the system on as soon as possible, even if it means losing everything once or twice to get open. You generally don't lose it all, but it's very difficult to see your investment melt down the hill or get washed down the hill but you need to make that decision aggressively. And if you do, you will have success.
So it sounds like you've evolved your operating philosophy, and there's some management decisions and some command and control going on there where you staff up and get ready. I have to imagine, Ron, that you've also put in a lot better technology over the past 40 years. If you can frame this up for us, what was Ski Big Bear's snowmaking system like 40 years ago, or whatever window you want to peg it to? And how have you evolved, and what does it look like today? And how does that contribute to you being able to meet that Christmas deadline every year?
It's a great question. There has never been a year in my involvement where we haven't improved our snowmaking. And it started with a very simple system. We pump our water and we have a bottomless pit of water. So that's a really good strength. We draw from a mountaintop lake that goes to a snowmaking pond, but it's a mile and a half away. And the original system had two inline pumps pumping through an 8-inch pipe up to the top of the mountain. It used that same pressure to then put it out with diesel compressors and an air cooling system, a good system designed by John Matheson and Ratnick, and a good system. But today we have turbines down at that pond. We pump over 3,000 gallons a minute. It then goes into a booster station at the top of the hill that we can boost that pressure to 200 to 300 pounds of pressure, because pressure is always better. So we have a little mountain that has more than 3,000 gallons a minute pumping to the top at the proper pressures. And each and every year we go buy what's ever out there for sale in the used market. So we have, and then this is really my brother, my brother and partner, Randy, is really deserves the success for us being able to become the snow farmers that we call ourselves. We are snow farmers, and it's the most important thing we do. But he is this MacGyver type person who goes out and we buy anything that anybody will sell us and we modernize it. We put it on the mountain. We have hundreds of guns all over this little mountain now, but every group of guns is a different type. So his value to us is so important, because he's one of the few that knows how each of these guns work the most efficiently. And then Randy and I still do the majority, almost all of the preseason grooming, because we want our product where we want it. And we don't allow people to jump in cats until we know that we have it where we want it. And then we stay on the schedule throughout the year, because we believe managing as snow farmers, we do it from seeing the surface and seeing what's underneath and knowing where every bump, rock, and ripple in the mountain is. And I think that's the success is as snow farmers first, and understanding our role to make sure that we are doing it efficiently and cost effectively.
Quick break from Ski Big Bear to hear from another amazing independent brand, Bonfire Collective. Let me ask you this. Does your marketing need a fresh perspective from industry experts? Do you need better storytelling? Do you need rebranding or advertising? If so, then let me introduce you to Bonfire Collective, a fractional marketing team that collaborates with ski areas and outdoor brands. Now, what does that mean exactly, to be a fractional marketing team that collaborates with ski areas and outdoor brands? Well, it means that Bonfire can help you rethink your approach in ways that can turbocharge your business. For example, Bonfire Collective took on the marketing at one New Hampshire ski area and doubled revenue in just 3 years. And when the storm was ready to invest in its first ever digital marketing campaign last year, I worked with Bonfire to make it happen. I could not be happier with the results, and I think you will honestly love working with them as well. To get started, you will want to connect with Eric over at Bonfire Collective. Eric was the co-founder of Bluebird Backcountry and has been a guest on the podcast if you want to hear that story. A human-powered ski area, and he knows the ski business. Visit bonfirecollective.com, or I will be happy to make that connection for you. Back to it. There are a lot of independent ski areas out there, Berkshire East up in Massachusetts, one, Plattekill in New York is another, that have sustained themselves over the years using some version of the model you just described, which is collecting a lot of used parts from all over the country and assembling them into a system and being handy. I'm curious how optimistic you are that that model will be something that a future Ski Big Bear would be able to do. And the reason I ask this, and I think about this all the time, we look at these super sophisticated lifts going up all over the country, and they cost tens of millions of dollars, and they're really computers as much as they're machines, right? And I think most machines, my car certainly is going in that direction. I just wonder, as machines become these computer hybrids, do you think that this alternative of being a guy who can go out and kind of monkey wrench things and put them together, do you think that that culture is something that will still be possible, or is there an element of this computerization of the mechanics of skiing that might be threatening to make that sort of bootstrapping obsolete?
I think the people like Randy, Laszlo, myself, and other people that have done this in a very unique way, the next generation may not have that stick-to-itiveness and that ability to really be a rounded mechanical person to fight through that. But on the same token, if you do it right and you rebuild things properly and maintain things properly, lifts can last a long, long while. And when you are buying, like Laszlo is into Hall lifts, we've always been into Borvik and now Partech lifts. They are very, very good machines for us. And as long as they're properly maintained, I think it's good. And we can get into the romance of sitting on a chair for 7 minutes as opposed to three minutes. And when I go skiing at these great places, I'm like everybody else. I want to get to the top as quickly as I can. But sometimes when you get on one of these slower lifts, it's not only nostalgic. And I think of Wildcat lift, the center pole lift at Alta. And when I get on that lift, that feels like home to me. I have some time to rest. I have some time to have a conversation. And I don't think that that's going away. I think it's here to stay. And for us, as really the introduction to the sport, the only way we exist in this industry is by having the ability to repurpose equipment that's coming from bigger places, because we'll never put in a high-speed quad at this point. I think we had an opportunity when we put in our double-double, when it was somewhat affordable. But now when you see a lift like Boyne is putting in at Brighton and everybody is putting in across the industry, small areas like us can never afford that. And I think we just have to embrace the nostalgic ski experience and not make an excuse for it, but sell it as it is. And I think we will be just fine into the future as far as I can see anyhow.
There's so many ways I could go with that round. There's so many interesting things in there. I do want to linger on snowmaking for one more minute, and I don't usually get this into snowmaking, but I want the listeners to appreciate how good the snowmaking is in Pennsylvania, because it has to be. Because anyone who survived has basically mastered this art. And you've managed to put together, sounds like your brother Randy is the leader on this system from all over the place, this kind of Franken system. I'm curious, as I had this conversation with SMI's Joe Vanderkellen, who talked about how much more efficient, how much more snow you can make for how much less energy now than you used to be able to. So as the technology gets better, but you're kind of cobbling together from every other place and utility costs are going up, how do you balance that whole machine to make sure that you can cover your entire ski area for as little money as possible, as efficiently as possible, continue to improve it, yet knowing that you're not going to be able to necessarily get those $15,000 state-of-the-art SMI guns or whatever brand it is at the moment. So how do you approach that whole puzzle of cost versus efficiency versus growing the system?
Yeah, another really interesting way to look at this industry. And when we buy something, we're thinking of a particular location, a tower we may put it on the ground. There's really two types of snowmaking guns in the world, and one are the fan guns like SMI that are wonderful, and other companies are Rico and others, and the other is the traditional air water and really the efficient air water guns that are out there by HKD and a number of developers. But we look for how much terrain does that need to cover. We look for the quality of snow that it puts out. You can put a less sophisticated gun in an area where it's a base builder, where you need a more sophisticated gun at a higher pressure and maybe at a higher level in areas where you're concerned about the surface conditions and less about building base. So I know I love the word, the Franken system, and it is a Franken system, but it's a Franken system with a purpose, and a Franken system where we look at the placement of every single gun that we put on the mountain and know what it can produce, how it can produce, and when we get a particular gun that we like, we look for them and we go find them. So yeah, it's somewhat cobbled together, but it's cobbled together with the knowledge of being snow farmers about knowing what we're looking for in the end result. But it's the critical piece to the success of every ski area in the mid-Atlantic and across the East Coast and now even to the West Coast. It's the backbone and the pulse of every ski area that exists.
And it's a lot of work. And one thing that always amazes me is when I look at a ski area like Beaver Mountain, Lori, that has no snowmaking. When you go out there and you're talking to Travis, the owner who's been on this podcast, and Marge, I think is his mom's name, how jealous are you that they just wait for the snow? They don't deal with snowmaking at all. Never mind the cost savings, just the hassle. I guess what I'm getting at here is how cool is that, and why didn't you stay there? Because Utah is obviously a very important place to you and your ski story. What brought you back to Pennsylvania? Why didn't you just stay out there and do the easier thing?
I think in life we've all learned once we know more about everybody, we all have our challenges and we all have our strengths, and we certainly know that changes season to season and week to week. So yes, you're right. They don't have snowmaking, but there's good reasons to have snowmaking, and so I don't suggest either way that it's good or bad. I just know that we're all dealing with our own individual challenges in that respect. As far as how I ended up here, I actually was born and raised in Pennsylvania and went out to Utah to go to college. And I started coming back to Pennsylvania to work summers at a children's residential summer camp in northeastern Pennsylvania. And that's where I met Ron. And we worked together during summers, and we knew that we both had interest in skiing. And when Ron got back into running Ski Big Bear at Mast Hope Mountain, he reached out to me and said, "Hey, what do you think about this?" And at the time, I was actually at Snowbird as the activities director. And when you're weighing those two options, it's not always an easy decision, but it made sense for me at the time to make that change, and it's been a great opportunity for me. I've been able to come and learn so much about the industry working at Ski Big Bear that I probably wouldn't have had if I would have stayed on the track that I was on. And this has given me a much more rounded uh, knowledge of the industry, has given me a lot of experiences, has allowed me to affect change, has allowed me to have leadership positions that probably would have been harder for me to obtain somewhere else. Coming in as an adult, not knowing how to ski, I learned to ski as an adult, so it just was a great opportunity for me, and I took it, and it's been awesome.
What an interesting path. How did you manage to grow up in Pennsylvania and never ski?
Uh, poverty. Sometimes when you grow up, you're not in control of the things you want to be in control of. And I was near Round Top, and our high school had a ski club, but I was never able to participate. And it was something that I always wanted to be able
Mm.
to do. And when I got into college, I was able to find a way to get up to Ski Big Bear, and I was very fortunate that way.
So it's an interesting roundabout path where you grew up in Pennsylvania, go to Utah, see the best skiing maybe in the world, then come back to Pennsylvania. What did you think of Pennsylvania skiing when you processed and had that context comparing it to Utah skiing?
Well, I wasn't a good skier when I
Okay.
first lived out there in Utah, so Ski Big Bear and all the areas up and down the East Coast. On my days off, I was skiing all over Pennsylvania and New York, and so that's where I was able to hone my skills and get better and ski with friends, and it's all about getting out on snow. No matter where you are, it's important to get out on snow, and fortunately, I had that opportunity.
What is it about skiing, Lori, that made you commit your career and your life to it? Because a lot of folks I talk to who come east from the west get kind of disheartened by the skiing, particularly if it's not in New England, if it's these smaller hills, and they find it hard to get into it. So what is it about skiing itself that pulled you in and kept you in for this long at the point where it looks like this is your career?
I've always been a great fan of outdoor recreation. I have participated in it my whole life. It's been a critical part of who I am. And I think having the opportunity to introduce skiing to so many people has been such a joy for me. I love being able to create those memories with people. And that's really what my job is all about, is how do I build a team that's out there creating an awesome memory for people that are going out skiing together and making them want to come back or making them want to experience other outdoor recreation, making them realize what an awesome experience it is. And so many people, it's countless people, come to you and say, you sold me my first season pass, and it's an awesome place to have that role when you're introducing people to the sport. And it was an easy thing for me to fall in love with. It matches some of the other activities that I enjoy, and I don't know how to explain it other than we were a perfect fit. There was chemistry there, and I don't know how that happens, but it was a perfect fit for me.
It resonates with me a lot, and it took me a while to appreciate that Ski Big Bear was and ski areas like it are not just for beginners, but also there are these places for families. And what I mean by that is, and I wrote about this recently, when my daughter, who's 16 now, was growing up, I would take her to places like Killington and Sugarbush because I liked Killington and Sugarbush and I wanted to drop her in ski school and go. But she found them very big and very overwhelming and very busy. And she really didn't start to like skiing until I started to take her to places like Plattekill and Catamount and Maple Ski Ridge up in New York, these smaller places. So, as general manager, how do you approach the mission of running Ski Big Bear to make it a place that's interesting for families, that's comfortable for them, that's accommodating, that is not trying to be something it's not? I think Mount Peter also does a very good job of this. He just knows what it is, right? So I imagine you have to have this very strong sense of identity. How do you approach that as GM, creating this place that is very specifically for this certain demographic of skiers?
Well, I think it starts with recognizing that so many of our skiers are there for the very first time and trying to constantly keep in mind what it was like my first time. The whole lack of knowledge when you try to go skiing, it's a very intimidating thing. It's not super easy. And so treating everyone as if they just paid $1 million to do what you're going to share with them, I think is the basis for it. You want them to feel good about the money they spent. When I go ski somewhere else, and what makes it a great day is I may have spent money doing it, but if I don't think about the money once while I'm participating in that activity, that's a plus for me. And that's what I want our guests to feel, is we want them to feel like they got good value, even if it costs them some money. Did they have a great day? Were they able to create positive memories? Were they treated with respect? Were they treated as if we appreciated them and their business? And that's how I go into every day, is trying to build that attitude amongst our whole team, because you don't know whether they're going to be there one time or perhaps they're there for a lifetime. But we want everyone to feel like they came to their hometown ski area, that this is going to be their place, and that's the attitude we go into it.
So you're general manager now and have been since 2019, which sounds like it was recent, but COVID sort of warped my sense of time. So it was actually 6 years ago. So you spent 18 years as assistant GM. I'm sorry, I don't know the name of your predecessor, but what did you learn from that person, and how did you direct Ski Big Bear from there? How did you build on whatever it is that they had built up over that couple of decades?
So Ron and Randy were my mentors from the start, and this whole process of me becoming general manager was the plan from the start. So I got to do everything from be there on snowmaking nights to I was in a snowcat. I learned that that is not the thing for me. I was able to get experience, in the rental shop. I was given experience figuring out things on my own. We've all taken on projects that we go, okay, this is something that I should be able to do, even though I haven't ever done it before. I'm going to figure it out. And, whether it's bringing in new technology or, building processes for our staff or our guests to be successful. Fortunately, Ron, Randy, and myself have made a great team over the past 20 years. And that's really where the success of our business has come from.
Let me take RFID as one example, right? Because Ski Big Bear had RFID before most ski areas in Pennsylvania. Now most of them do have it, but I believe you were one of the first. It's expensive, and I talked to a lot of operators in the Midwest, and they still use the metal wicket tickets, and they say the primary reason is the cost. So you're a small ski area, you're already fighting for market share with a lot of better capitalized competitors. What makes you make that decision and say, this is the time to make that investment, even though we could just keep printing paper tickets? And I don't know if you were directly involved in that or not, or when that actually happened, but and if you have a better example, go with it.
Well, I definitely was involved in that because it happened during COVID, and we took advantage of some of the programs that were available through, funding programs through the government to be able to bring in RFID. And it was a way for us to be able to best serve our customer in terms of being able to minimize lines at the ticket window, allow for online sales, allow for some of that self-service that some people aspire to. We did not eliminate our ticket windows entirely. So for those that still want that personal touch and want to come to the ticket window, we still allow that to happen. It has been you're right, it's very expensive, but it's been a priority for us. We don't have a lot of real estate. We don't have a lot of staff to be able to man that. We're able to keep our staffing costs down by allowing RFID to take the place of some of that. So it is a balancing act, and it was really a joint decision, but we felt that that was the best move for us to make as we move through COVID and beyond.
As I told you, Randy was the MacGyver on the mechanical end. I'm a person who has always embraced technology and enjoy that, and love the challenge of technology. And it was something that we embraced. And who would have thought that a little place like Ski Big Bear would be a leader in putting RFID in? And a bigger challenge even to that is that we're upside down. So it's not like you have to get this RFID before you could go down the mountain. The challenge for us is when they get to the mountain without something, what do we do? And it doesn't work. So it's been a challenge. But I do want to step back just one moment. And I mean, Lori's a dynamo. When she worked for me at camp, and this was a large organization with 600 employees, and Lori became a key person there. I remember saying to my brother, we need to get Lori over here. And his first question to me was, you think she could handle it? And I said, give her a year, she'll be running us around. And we're so proud of her accomplishment. She is the voice for every little ski area out there across the country. She's president of the Pennsylvania Ski Area Association and is leading them into a different realm now with outdoor recreation. She's on the board of the National Ski Areas Association, and she's on that board not only representing women in leadership, but every little ski area, just like us, has a voice through Lori. And that's a proud moment for us. And it's something that resonates. And wherever we go skiing, everybody knows Lori. She's this little, I'm going to give her the benefit of the doubt that she finally reached 4'11", but she's this little dynamo in the industry that has made a name for every ski area, just like Ski Big Bear. And it's so important that we have a voice on a national level, the state level, and she is that voice. So that is a wonderful accomplishment and something that we're very proud of.
Oh, it sounds like you've really got this great team to run this little ski area. And Ron, your passion for Pennsylvania skiing and small ski areas was apparent in what you just said, just as your passion for Utah skiing was obvious at the Open. And I realized I nudged you that way. But let's go back here, because you probably could have moved to Utah. Sounds like you have a home there and are very comfortable there in the Wisconsin community. Yet you've been in Pike County, Pennsylvania, your whole life. I don't want to overstate this, but we are seeing a lot of migration around the country of folks like me. I grew up in the town of 800 people in Michigan. I live in New York City, right? A lot of people leave. You've stayed, which I think is tremendous. Talk about what has kept you there in Pennsylvania and why it's so important for you to stay in this place that maybe a lot of other people are leaving, and make sure that it has a nice ski facility. And you mentioned earlier that you're on the board of the local bank. What is it about being a citizen of this part of the world that has kept you there and kept you so engaged in it?
It's a good question, but it's an easy one for me to answer. I always wanted to stay here. I had a wonderful upbringing, and my uncle and parents got me involved. I don't remember starting skiing because I was 3 years old, because my dad was on the ski patrol. My uncle was running a ski area, and it just got in our blood early. But I've always been interested in the community. I grew up in a large family. My father was one of 10. They all stayed here. They're all athletes. They're all tradespeople. I think I'm the first one in that side of the family that graduated from college, because they were all into other skills. I've been on the board of a hospital here. Yes, I'm on the board of a bank, but in 2018, I jumped into other things, and I was appointed to be a commissioner of the county, the highest executive level at the county. And it's something I never thought that I would do. And then I was elected in 19, and then again 4 years later, to lead the county, to build a hospital, to bring medical services, to make this county better. And at the same time, shortly after that, my brother Randy was elected as the local judge. And that opened the door for us to step away from our business as deeply as we were involved with. Only we could do that because we had people like Lori to take on the leadership. And we then appointed her the general manager. And even though she was running things before that, even though she may say she wasn't, she was ready and needed a little room. But the most important aspect for us staying here, both myself and my brother, is we still have our parents. And Heath still thinks that he works for us on a day-to-day basis. He is the mechanical person. He is a predecessor to Randy. He still fixes everything that is very technical and very mechanical for us. And they are now 88 and 87 and still living a vibrant life, but it's a homing device for us. And we learned from my parents to serve people. We learned from my dad that don't let anything intimidate you, and you'll figure it out, and you'll get through things. And we're leaders in the community. We enjoy that leadership, but with being leaders is a sense of responsibility. And part of that responsibility is staying involved in our local community.
So let's focus on the ski area part of that for a moment here, Ron. How important is it to you that Northeastern Pennsylvania has a modern, reliable ski area like Ski Big Bear. To go back to my example for a moment, small town in Michigan, there were 3 little ski areas when I was a teenager, and 2 of them are now closed. There's only one. So I wonder if I was growing up there now, would I learn to ski? And none of them was nearly as nice as Ski Big Bear. They were all much smaller and only had one chairlift. But nonetheless, there's a lot of places that could have ski areas that don't because no one could figure out how to make it last. So how important is it to you that this facility exists in perpetuity in this part of the world?
Immensely important. And I've been in this industry long enough to know that there used to be 4 or 5, 6 little areas in this little area. And we're the remaining ski area. And that's really, we recognize that that was our responsibility. And I'll focus on something else that not many people start, but one of the biggest enjoyments that we have about maintaining something like this here is the ability to give young people their first opportunity to work in this industry after they are introduced to it is really gratifying. And it's mostly young people that we can mentor and we can teach them the responsibilities, but also introduce them to a lifelong sport that you can do with your family. The joy for me is to be able to go out to Utah or bring my family home and ski the same terrain as my grandchildren with my children. And there's no other sport that you can do that. There is just no other sport. I used to say when I put my children on a lift with me, I had 7 minutes of their undivided attention because they just can't leave. So as soon as we got on the lift, they just sat back and listened to my life philosophy. And it's remarkable. And they do the same with their children now. But it is simply the best way of life that there is for a family. And our role in it, in beginning that adventure, is so important. And we're very proud of the role that we play in that area.
You've played a big role throughout the ski area's history. I don't believe, but correct me if I'm wrong, that your family actually founded it. Ski Big Bear is not that old, came online in the 70s, as a lot of Pennsylvania ski areas did, when snowmaking technology got to a point where you could open such facilities. But Ron, as much as you can you take us back to the founder, I believe, was it Carl Hope, and how your family initially got involved with Ski Big Bear?
Yeah, great story. Carl Hope was an innovator. Carl Hope was a big developer. Carl Hope had a vision for every piece of property that he looked at. And what he did is he found local people and local leaders to help him on that journey. The leader he found at Ski Big Bear, which was Mast Hope Mountain at the time, was my uncle. And my uncle Eddie and his wife Ella were the first community managers. He laid out all the trails, he installed the lifts, and we're in a great area for the ski business because we were close to Borvig, which is now Partect, and Gary Schultz, and then Hagen run Borvig. We had people like Bob Blennis, who not only was a lift installer, but he was the representative to the industry because they were the snowcat salespeople. So everything that happened was in an area where we could control. But it was built by my uncle. I was there, I believe, on opening day. And then, as most of these resorts do, they go through this really difficult time when, after Carl Hope died, I believe it was in 1980, his wife Hilda took over. And then it went through a series of developers that were very difficult. And each time a developer came in, they reached back to me and said, "Hey, can you figure this out for us?" And I would come in and it would be a mess. We'd get it up and running and they would think, "Okay, we can do this now." And it would immediately fail. Until the community found that the only way that they could make this sustainable was to purchase it themselves. So I helped the community purchase it. And in the late 90s, that happened. And again, we were brought in as managers, and I brought my brother into the industry at that point in time. And then we got to a point where they said, "Oh, we can do this." And we left and it fell apart again. Then they asked us to come back and we said, "Only on our terms." And in about 1993, we formulated our company And we said we would lease it and operate it through a very interesting organization because the goal of the community was to get skiing for free. And nothing is for free. But to this day, the entire extended family of each family, and there's 1,600 property owners, get skiing at no cost. They're involved with the capital improvements, but the operation is all done through our investments. And it's been a business. Everybody says, we at the end of every year is how did we do that? How did we have a large majority of our skiers not pay anything for the operation? We did it because we made money in rentals, in snow sports school, in public skiers. And each of those property owners knew that it was important for them to bring guests. So all 1,600 property owners bring guests. And that's been a formula that's worked. And when we needed to improve, then the community funded those improvements through really a $75 fee for what they're paying in their annual dues goes to fund the capital improvements. So I think it's the best deal in the world for skiing for families, and I am sure that I'm correct. And that's becoming more and more challenging as the cost of operations goes up, and we can't impact the revenue as much because many of the people coming aren't paying for skiing. So that's going to become more and more challenging into the future.
That's kind of amazing. I was assuming when I read about that model that homeowners ski for free, that they paid some sort of activity fee or homeowners association fee, and that the ski area was subsidized by a portion of that. But it sounds like that's not the case. You don't get anything from the homeowners association?
As I said, they fund the capital projects. So we would bring them a list of things, like when we installed a new chair, we would bring that to the community with a business plan. At the time, we were on a profit sharing thing. So part of the profits went back into and had to be used for skiing. But the smartest thing that we did in 1993 was to say that the first $175 that went for the collection of dues, and those dues are around $2,000 round number right now. But the first 175 went to the ski and it was protected. That no longer exists like that because we changed the formula a number of years ago, but it is why it has survived. In what happens at every community ski area is when they have a good year, they take the profits and they use it for their other amenities. And then they have a bad year and they get into a position where it's unsustainable. That has never happened because both the respect that the board had for us and the relationship that we had with the board, we just didn't allow that to happen. And we are a very interesting success story for this industry.
So Eastern Pennsylvania, and I don't know if you're quite in the Poconos, and I'm always confused about exactly where the borders are, but there's a bunch of ski areas that are attached to housing developments in Eastern Pennsylvania. Eagle Rock, Locust Lake Village, Pocono Ranchland, Saw Creek, the Hideout. All of those are available exclusively for homeowners, but you use a hybrid model. It sounds as though it's been quite successful. Do you see that as one of the reasons why Ski Big Bear has been able to survive is through this hybrid model? Did you ever consider the private model? Ultimately, what's the history behind how you arrived here and ultimately what kind of difference that makes to you?
Yeah, a good and challenging question. A consideration of making it private has always been on the table. But I think when Carl Hope developed this, he did it to create a four-season community in the ski area as an amenity. When it was built, and I'll give my uncle credit for this, he believed, and Carl Hope also developed Shawnee. And we were someplace in between Shawnee, we're similar size and vertical as Shawnee, and these smaller communities that had areas with 200 and 300 vertical. We were a little bigger. And my uncle convinced him to say that the community needed this just as much as the development needed it. And it's been a relationship that has been enabled. If you go to the Hideout, you go to any of these other places that you mentioned, there's a usage fee. There isn't a usage fee at Ski Big Bear. And it's not just the family that owns the property. if a grandparent owns the property, it's all his kids and all his grandchildren. They all get passes up to a certain amount. So it's a very interesting thing, not well thought out, but through hard work and through a commitment from an elected board of directors, we give them credit for going along this ride and being supportive of it. The value of their homes inside of the community of Mast Hope is the key component to this vibrant little facility, making it a four-season place. It's not a resort, it's a community, but it is a four-season community. And they recognize that having the ski area increases the value of their property significantly. And that's been the key component to make sure that they continue to know that.
So you found a good model, and there are a couple elements that we've discussed that contribute to this longevity of Ski Big Bear. The snowmaking, I think, is one. I think this hybrid model is another, and having professional management. This is, I don't think that most skiers appreciate this outside of the region. This is maybe the densest region of ski areas in the United States. And you have all those little ones I just mentioned, but you also have Blue Mountain and Camelback on the Icon Pass, Jack Frost Big Boulder, owned by Vail. You have Montage, Shawnee, Elk. Montage and Elk are both pretty sizable. And I realize they're not exactly next door to you, but they're within an hour and a half. Then you have Mountain Creek in New Jersey. You have Holiday Mountain in New York. Go back 40 years, and there were double that number. I mean, the amount of lost ski areas in the Poconos in eastern Pennsylvania is amazing. How do you stay competitive against all of these bigger mountains? And how has Ski Big Bear been able to survive when so many ski areas in this part of the world died? Was it snowmaking? Was this hybrid? Is there an X factor? What is the primary behind this story that's kept this place going?
I think there's two parts of it that are so critical. And first of all, we're all friends in the ski industry. And when we need something, we call one another and we're supportive of one another. We all want the other to succeed because it's a region that creates the ski industry. It's not one individual. It's a compilation of all the ski areas that make the Poconos and the surrounding areas like Endless Mountain, Elk Mountain, and over in Scranton with Montage. We all need to be vibrant for people to come to this area. But there's two things that make Ski Big Bear just a little different, and I've touched upon it. We have 1,600 families as salespeople. That is critical. Critical. If they all bring a friend, we're successful. But more than that, and I don't want to be boastful about this, but it is our integrity and our stick-to-itiveness to make this go, to do whatever it takes to make sure that we get through every obstacle. And Randy and I and Lori, as she's part of the family, know that you just can't let anything get in the way of having success with snowmaking, having success with being open, having success when a gearbox goes. You need to have that stick-to-itiveness, and you need to have tunnel vision in a community that has a lot of amenities. And that tunnel vision towards skiing really has led to us surviving, and not just surviving, thriving. I mean, you mentioned a lot of ski areas. I can confidently say that I believe that our bottom line is as good or better than any of them that you mentioned. And it's because we found a way to do it efficiently. We found a way to be our own workers, and we found good people as partners, and chose the right partners throughout the years. And we've also had a very respectful relationship with the community and the elected board of directors of the community. And we ran the community for a number of years just to create the stability in our business to continue the skiing. We no longer run the community, but we have a direct relationship with every single board member to make sure that it stays viable.
Really curious about the community from one point of view. Short-term rentals have really changed the context of resort towns and mountain living. And I realize that there's a much different dynamic going on there in Northeast Pennsylvania, but I'm curious what sorts of steps, if any, that the community has taken to keep the neighborhood from turning into basically a giant hotel? Are there short-term rental safeguards? Is that allowed? Is that a concern? Is it not really a problem given how your community uses it? How is that whole dynamic working within Mast Hope Mountain and changing the community or not?
Very intuitive question and a real challenge. Our contract was written so that if they change their short-term rental policy, most of the region has gone away from short-term rentals for all the reasons that people have struggled with. They want to know who they're waking up next to and who's in the next house, and they didn't buy it to live next to a real transient thing. But our contract was predicated on them being able to keep and manage short-term renters. And it's a little different in a community like Mast Hope because we have security, we have public safety, we have armed public safety, and a place for them to check in, a place for someone to call if the people that are renting are misbehaving. That's not always the case in the general population. And it's been something that's a lifeline. We don't have a hotel. Our beds are everybody's home. And every real estate agent around this region will tell you that we're one of the most desirable places to be. One, because of skiing, but two, because of short-term renters. If you get into a position with your second home investment or your first home investment, you still have the ability to rent that to pay your mortgage and that. So it has not been a big hotel. It's a good percentage of people that use this opportunity, but it's a lifeline for the ski part of it because it brings skiers in and gives them a place to stay.
So you have a great relationship with the community. The community is modernizing, stabilizing. Recreation Management Corporation, which is your company that I mentioned in the intro that you lead, has been overseeing the ski area for over 30 years, it sounds like. And one thing I've noticed in covering the ski industry and ski areas all over the country is that most of the time when you have a nonprofit or community-run ski area, the most successful ones, for example, Bogus Basin in Idaho, are successful because they hired professional management. And that sounds like that model has been very successful for Ski Big Bear. We were chatting before, and it sounds like that model may be changing. What can you tell us about that and how you're going to set Ski Big Bear up for success, maybe in a post-recreation management world?
Another good question, and I think you touched upon it early, and I said offline that my goal was to be at the round tables at the Alf Lodge at Alta as more regularly as I possibly can. They have tables for 70 plus, 80 plus, 90 plus. I turned 65. Randy is 62. We recognize that our time has to be spent with our growing families, and we initiated a conversation with them for a succession plan. We can't be here forever. Our children saw how hard we worked, and I have 4 and Randy has 2. They don't have interest in this industry, not because it hasn't been very good for us as families, but because it's really, really hard work. So we initiated a conversation, and just this past weekend, a contract was passed on a 3-year transition. And that transition means that the assets, so we own the snow grooming equipment, snowmaking hoses, all of the RFID equipment, all of the databases, the websites, the name, everything. So we initiated a purchase of the fixed and intellectual assets. But with that, all we want is for them to be able to continue as we did. And my first proposal to them was, this can't work for us unless there's a user fee. And their immediate comeback was a very realistic one and said, we want to always continue to get skiing as something that we don't pay for. And this evolved into this transition where they take over the assets May 1. We continue, as we always have for the past 30 years, for the next 3 years, and we share in the profits. We train their staff. We help them hire staff. We put an emphasis on bringing professionals in to continue this. And then at the end of the 3 years, it's our responsibility that they're ready to take this on. And it's our hope that people like Lori and people like some of our key people, they will have the opportunity to stay. And if they stay, it will go on as if we didn't exist. And I've always had the philosophy of a manager is the very best manager if they can step aside and they're not missed. Randy and I both hope that we step aside and we're not missed and our legacy carries on. We've built every snow tower, the lodge, the skier services building, every underground system. We've done that ourselves, and we leave that to the community as our legacy of a system that works. But we all know without the right people running it and without the untrained professionals running it, it can change in one season. And we will do everything we possibly can to make sure that this success that we've had carries on into the foreseeable future.
Lori, where do you fit into this? How do you feel? Do you plan to stay with Ski Big Bear long term? And how do you replace Ron, a person who's built this system, that knows it intuitively, that maybe didn't write the blueprint on a napkin in the file drawer, or maybe he did, but and maybe you have that skill set. I just don't know. How are you preparing for this transition, and do you intend to stay around? And if I'm speaking out of turn, just tell me it's none of my business.
Well, I think that there are a lot of decisions to be made over the future. Ron would really like you to put those golden handcuffs on me right now. That's for sure. But right now, I have a great and stable job, and I'm not actively seeking other positions. I am working to make sure that this transition goes smoothly as possible.
All right, I have a funny question for you. And we had an exchange previous to this conversation where you said we always have to call it Ski Big Bear so we don't get confused with Big Bear, California. Now, it used to be called, as you mentioned, Mast Hope Mountain. I'm curious if you have the context of how you decided to call it Big Bear in 1980 whatever, or 70 whatever, and if that was ever a problem before the internet came along and the world realized there were two Big Bears in America, which they might not have before, because obviously there's a much larger Big Bear owned by Altara Mountain Company and the Icon Pass out in Metro Los Angeles, which does an ungodly number of skier visits. So how did you end up with this name? Was it always a problem? And have you ever considered changing it, because it's a little bit of a pain in the butt?
Yeah, we've all made mistakes along the way. And I came up with the name because Pike County is known for its black bear in the region. And we made the change because of a really down period that Mast Hope Mountain had. And had nicknames like Last Hope and Lost Mountain and everything that you could imagine, because it closed. They turned the power off with people on the lifts one year. And it had gone through a really difficult time. So we thought rebranding was the right thing to do. In hindsight, I think I would have never changed the name. And it took years for people not to call it Mast Hope Mountain and Ski Big Bear. And there wasn't a conflict back then. It wasn't, and as you explain, when people search now to go on their vacation, we've booked lessons. The people going to California, we've sold them tickets, we've sold them season passes. Only because the name is Big Bear. So we've migrated into Ski Big Bear, PA, wherever we possibly can. But I don't think we'll ever go through the process of changing the name because it's so difficult and so cumbersome. Plus, people know us and respect us now. And I think Ski Big Bear has great value now, and most people around the East know us. So we won't change it. We'll continue to educate people that are booking lessons and going to California that it's a long drive, and we'll continue with the name. But it was a number of things I would change. The other, and you, Stuart, I listen to every one of your podcasts, and I know what a lift person you are. And one of the interesting things at Ski Big Bear is we have one of the last doubles installed. You should know that it was right before that, we had a quad lift that was voted on by the community and lost by 3 votes. And we said that presentation we didn't do well and we weren't successful. And building a double double with really Partech was an efficient thing to do because we utilized the chairs, the grips, the gearboxes from the original lift, and really had to buy one double and some extra parts and new towers to put in a new lift. If I had to do it over again, knowing what I know now, a quad lift would have been better for the educational part. We teach mostly private lessons here at Ski Big Berry, and it's our identity. We sell more private lessons than a lot of the bigger areas close to us. But part of that is on a double lift, you can only sit with one student. And I think if we had a quad, we could do a lot better job with multiple people in the same lessons. Although we still are a bring your children, drop them off and leave. So we know everybody that's out there skiing, and having a person help with a person in a lesson, bringing them up the chair is something that our people would always do. But that is another thing that I probably would have tried to influence differently. But it works for us. The redundancy of a double double and the value of that still exists. It's on the same loading platform. So as soon as we get a line, we flip the button, we turn on the second lift, and that line goes away. It still works for us. And when we did it, we weren't anywhere near as busy as we are now, and it wasn't a problem. I'd always say I want to look at hanging a triple on one of the sides of the double double. That will help us, but we'll see. We'll see where it takes us in the future. None of our lifts, except the surface lifts, were purchased new because we were people out there looking for equipment that we could rebuild and repurpose. So
That quad proposal that got voted down, was that a detachable? You mentioned a detachable earlier. You may have had an opportunity, or was that a used lift from somewhere else as well?
it was a used lift from somewhere else, but as soon as that got voted down, there was a small period of time when we looked at putting a detachable in, and we would put a detachable in for the same reason everybody else does. It really wasn't the length of the ride. It's the ease of loading and unloading for a very elementary level skier. That would be the reason. But we had a small window where that was affordable. It's no longer affordable. If we put another lift in to replace what we have, it would be a fixed grip quad, as most people would put out. And uh, there's only a couple manufacturers. There's two that I'm aware of. Partech says they won't manufacture, but our relationship with Hagen is as strong as anybody's, and I'm pretty sure we could convince them to do one more. But I don't see that happening in the near future.
How about Grizzly and Little Bear? Are those in good shape? You happy with those long term? Is there an opportunity for a quad to replace those?
Yeah, I think both of those would be opportunities for quad because of the teaching element, but they are in wonderful shape. They all have new drives, new safety circuits. They're these older Borvig lifts with all the modern drives and safety circuits in them. So they're reliable, good machines.
All right, I want to talk a little bit more about that public private dynamic. And one of the ways that you have brought more people in is with Indy Pass. And you joined, I believe this was your second full winter, correct me if I'm wrong. But what attracted that you to that coalition, and is it working? Is it bringing folks into Big Bear?
So Indy Pass, first of all, is appealing because we believe in independent resorts. We believe in small areas. We believe in coming together and having a larger voice. And so the mission behind Indy Pass is something that we can definitely align with. And when we had our initial conversations with them, there's a lot of positives to it. And then there's always those questions about, whether you're going to lose some of your season pass holders, or, is it really going to be what you think it is? And so far, Indy Pass has worked really well for us. We have a very loyal following in our customer base, in our season pass base, that we are extremely appreciative of. And they know our product. They know that we're a reliable product. They know that we're going to be there. And so it has not impacted that. Instead, what we have seen is a lot of midweek growth to be able to introduce our ski area to people that haven't ever known us. Our marketing is not competitive when compared with some of our neighbors. And so people coming to the region, if they're looking for other places to ski and they're on Indy Pass, we suddenly show up, they try us out, and fortunately, the reviews that we've seen on social media related to the Indy Pass customer have been very positive. We've shown well, and that's just, good reinforcement overall, and hopefully that continues to help generate a new clientele versus, losing an existing clientele. So far, that's worked well for us.
So let's talk about that season pass then. $400 is your rate for 2025 to 26. That's the lowest in the region. Montage's early bird price was a little lower, but that was a flash sale at $399. Talk about your pricing strategy, Lori, why this lower price model continues to work for you as a lot of ski areas moved away from it, especially after COVID.
It's still really important to us that families be able to ski together. We have always tried to be very close to the least expensive to ski, both in day tickets and in season passes. It's easy to take the price up, but we're in a lot of competition around us, and we want people to come and try us out and be pleasantly surprised. We want them to find out, oh my gosh, I only paid this much and I got this. And so that over the years has worked for us. We have changed our pricing structure a little bit in that we no longer separate child passes from adult passes. It helps us to keep parents skiing. If we're not charging more for adults to ski, we want our families to be there together, and that's been an easy way for us to do it. We still have a beginner access ticket, not a season pass, but a beginner access ticket that allows them the surface lifts only. So for those that are just trying out, they can still get an even lower cost ticket. But for season passes and for day tickets, all of our pricing is the same, whether child or adult.
I kept you all day, but thank you. This was awesome. Really appreciate it. And I hope to see you again soon, somewhere.
Take care, Stuart. Keep doing the good work.
Thank you, and keep doing what you do, Stuart. It is my favorite podcast in the whole wide world. People need to tell stories like our story.
A big thank you to Ron Schmalzle, President, Co-owner, and General Manager of Recreation Management Corporation, and Lori Phillips, General Manager of Ski Big Bear, Pennsylvania. If you have kids, if you're in New York, that is your spot, or it's one of them at least. We didn't get into this, but Ski Big Bear has this really fun little trail network that winds through the trees. Your kids will love exploring it. Lots more pods in the pipeline with view eaters of, among many others, Mount Hood Meadows, Arapahoe Basin, Colorado, Sugarloaf, Maine, Blue Mountain, Ontario, Killington, Vermont, Taos, New Mexico, and I'm booking more all the time. You will want to subscribe to the Storm Skiing newsletter at stormskiing.com to get those podcasts the moment they are live. You can also follow the Storm on X, Instagram, and YouTube at Storm Ski Journal. Until next time, stay well, stay safe. I'm Stuart Winchester, and I will talk to you again very soon.